So, within the last month or two, banking institutions and payment processors have started disassociating with alternative media personalities who attempt to compete with the mainstream media, and websites which attempt to compete with the major social media companies and corporations, such as Gab or BitChute. And naturally, as planned, this was a gigantic controversy. Mainstream conservative pundits and internet personas have all been decrying this as a conspiracy among private companies to deplatform dissenting opinions they don't like being shared online. Now, we went over this back when the state tried the same bullshit back in the summer of 2018 when they had political think tanks such as the NATO-funded Atlantic Council writing the terms of service and directing the management team of the state-funded Facebook. The CIA managed and funded Google, removing websites from their search results, with state-funded Twitter arbitrarily removing accounts from social media, and with the CIA-controlled mainstream media outlets and useless online cannon fodder arguing that this is a result of unfettered private enterprise, and that in order to fix this problem, of course, we need a new government regulation they refer to as the Internet Bill of Rights, whatever the fuck that means. Though according to the state, apparently, as shown by multiple bills proposed at the time, it means that the FCC is going to nationalize social media companies. In other words, no one can compete with them because the only entities in the market are ones controlled by the state. The FTC is going to determine their terms of service and fucking criminalize people for posting content they arbitrarily deem to be unfair, quote-unquote. And they're going to start requiring people to prove their identities on their social media accounts before they create a page or make any posts. So, you want to voice political opinions online? Well, now you're going to need a photocopy of your birth certificate and citizenship papers. Yay! Even without this relatively easy to find information showcasing the state's involvement in manufacturing the censorship of social media, though, you can simply use inductive reasoning to prove at the very least something suspicious is going on. Private companies functioning as they're set up to only have an interest in one thing, and that is making profit. On their own, they are not political entities. They can't force people to pay them, and they require people to associate with them in order to keep themselves funded. So banning people for political reasons and turning away a gigantic consumer base is directly contrary to the interests of a private company. Though occasionally companies or corporations will attempt to market a political idea they've interpreted as being popular, generally this backfires and the company in question ends up losing money over it by alienating a large chunk of their consumer base. Though occasionally, like in the case of id Software's Doom Eternal QuakeCon 2018 trailer, companies can read the consumer base accurately and end up gaining by profiting off of the controversy they generate from a loud base of consumers their product doesn't even appeal to, which adds another layer of novelty to the product they're selling for the consumer base it does. But every time, without exception, a company has attempted to appeal to the intersectional social justice crowd with their marketing, they end up losing millions, if not billions, like in Facebook's case. Clearly, this is not a marketable business decision. And with social media companies, the product they're selling is the consumer, and they can't make money unless people are using their platform. So, if we were to assume that these private companies were just censoring people in an actual free market without state funding, that move would be financial suicide, in which case they'd go out of business shortly after. And if you've seen the recent stock figures for companies like Twitter and Facebook, it's looking increasingly like they're going to simply go bankrupt, even with the state subsidies. Plus, on top of that, the state low-key has already unintentionally admitted that social media companies are state-run. In that lawsuit where Trump was sued for blocking someone on Twitter back in 2018, the judge ruled that Trump couldn't block people because he was a government employee on a public forum. According to the public forum doctrine cited by the court case, a public forum only applies to government property, and government property is legally defined as all property owned or leased by the U.S. government. So, okay, we know that the social media censorship scandal is manufactured by the state and was created as an attempt to condition people so that they wouldn't become disenfranchised with the political system because the state is currently trying to nationalize social media, presumably to stop the spread of political narratives the various intelligence agencies don't have control over. Well, enter Operation Choke Point, a program set up by the Department of Justice in 2013 which utilizes the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, entirely directed by the Department of Justice, has the FDIC target specific individuals or businesses and designate them as high-risk clients, which would manipulate their credit ratings and interest, meaning that if a bank or third-party payment processor were to associate with them, they could potentially violate finance laws, resulting in the businesses and individuals targeted being completely cut off from all the banks. The state effectively targets individuals or businesses they don't like and make it a criminal act for them to access a bank account or a payment processor, hence the name Operation Choke Point. We know that the Department of Justice was and still is heavily invested in the social media censorship scandal, and was arguing for the regulations on social media mentioned earlier. We also know that Operation Choke Point has been and still is used to target individual bloggers running businesses that the DOJ doesn't like. So, no. Banks and payment processors are not censoring people based on a mainstream media conspiracy or because of SJW CEOs. Like social media companies, banks make their money by associating with as many people as possible, so it would be against their financial interests to disassociate with people based on purely political reasons. Based on the evidence we have, it is reasonable to conclude that the FDIC, as directed by the Department of Justice, is targeting political personalities on social media and alt-tech platforms by labeling them as high-risk clients so that payment processors and banks will disassociate. They do this so that media personalities will blame the seemingly inexplicable disassociation on some leftist conspiracy within all the major companies and argue as a result that the state needs to come in and nationalize social media. Exactly what the state wants and has already tried. People such as Sargon or Dave Cullen sometimes unbelievably argue that politicians and state actors are simply too dumb to understand social media manipulation, or that all of their manipulation plots are going to be single-step actions which are all transparent enough for everyone to see, and this is a dangerously naive perspective. In conclusion, this is just yet another example of the government manipulating multiple different parties by having them all play into one single narrative which benefits the state's interests through either direct or indirect manipulation, also known as the problem-reaction-solution propaganda model. And remember that everything the state does is arbitrary by necessity. It has no incentive to economize or serve people because it can simply steal your money whenever they want more and outlaw competition. The last thing you want is more centralization or state control if your issue with the internet currently is censorship. Because on top of the state being responsible for the internet censorship we have now, the state manages everything the way that terms of service on a bigger social media site is enforced. What we need is to create innovations which encrypt as many means of associating with one another as feasibly possible and make them decentralized, preferably through a blockchain or node-style network setup. I and a few other figures here on YouTube are currently running a project known as FNet on Discord where we are developing such a network. I know longtime viewers of my channel may be aware, but for those who aren't, I'll put a link in the description where you could come, ask questions, and make recommendations. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time.